Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. Remember, on Exit Rich, if you give us any type of questions, comments that we read on air, I will send you 3 chapters of my book, Exit Rich. I appreciate everyone joining us back on a Wednesday, and we have a very special guest, David Allen. David Allen is with us today. So let's talk a little bit about David Allen. He's one of the world's most influential thinkers on productivity. We need that. Our audience needs that, David. So many people are busy, but they're not productive. David's 40 years of experience as a management consultant and executive coach have earned him the title of personal productivity guru by Fast Company and one of the top 5 executive coaches by Forbes Magazine. By Forbes Magazine, y'all. So he's great. Forbes says he's great. He's the guru. He's the guru. His best-selling book, the groundbreaking New York Times best-selling book, Getting Things Done, and its methods, commonly known as the GTD, spawned a movement with millions of practitioners and fans around the world. His methods of staying relaxed and focused, he seems pretty relaxed and focused in this interview so far, or in the pre-interview,
We'll
in our,
see. We'll see.
in our fast-paced world are now being spread by certified trainers all over the world. And I think you're in 90 countries. My gosh, y'all, 90 countries. So how many editions are we on of Getting Things Done?
The second edition was
Second
in
edition.
2015. Yeah.
So David Allen, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here.
I'm glad we finally connected. It's taken a while. So David was actually born in Louisiana, raised in Texas, lived in California, and now he's in a beautiful place that everybody should go see the tulips bloom. That's Amsterdam, my friends. Amsterdam. Right, David?
That's it.
Loving it, he says. All right. So, David, I can't help but ask, what were you like as a little boy?
Uh, I was an approval suck.
An
I,
approval suck.
I like to please everybody. So as a little boy, I did whatever I needed to do to get people to stop arguing and to laugh and to have fun
Wow.
because I couldn't stand conflict. So I was pretty good at figuring out what people liked and how to support that. From the time I was, God, I think I memorized a Bugs Bunny uh, record when I was 6 years old, and I would come into the living room and perform it, and everybody would love that. And so that's depends on how little you're talking about. My dad died when I was really young. Uh, my mom then raised me and my older brother, but she knew because of my proclivity to performing, acting, expressing myself. She gave me acting lessons in Shreveport at the very new Marjorie Lyons Playhouse, which was built right then in the 1950s. And their first. So anyway, I took these acting lessons, and it turns out they gave me a role in The King and I, which was uh,
Oh,
their pilot performance. So I was Lewis in The King and I. You know,
how
I
old were
wish
you then?
I wish a happy tune 11.
Oh, no, go ahead with that tune. Go ahead.
And every single time when I don't remember much of that, but it was great. So that was a lot of what I did was, I was a pretty trustworthy kid for everybody. So my mom let me, go do all that, spend night, go to cast parties and things like that as a kid at age 11. So
That's
that was
amazing. That's
that
exciting.
was that was good. I actually, Michelle, I'm a closet introvert. Actually, a lot of actors are introverts.
Hmm.
So acting sort of gave me this outlet to be able to express myself. And given what I've done in my 78 years, In my career, people think I'm a real extroverted person, but I'm actually not. Uh, so I don't know what the book is that talked about the value of introverts these days, and how how underrated they are because of how powerful they can be. But anyway, so that was that was a lot of what I did. I made good grades. I was friends with teachers, friends with my whatever. My mom had been a school teacher. I had aunts and uncles who were in the education field, so I knew how to please teachers. I made good grades the first 6 weeks, so that then from then on they thought I was smart, so I didn't have to work any harder, the rest of the year to keep my grades up. And then I got into high school and got on the debate team, was a state champion debater in
That's
tech.
really good for an introvert, is to get joined a debate team.
Yeah, I know, I know. Anyway, so that was a lot of my history, I guess, that affected then my career and then what I did later on.
So you said you always avoided conflict from an early age on. Is that because you grew up with conflict and you
No, I just
no?
couldn't stand it. I'd get sick. I had an aunt and uncle that would argue with each other playing bridge, and I would have to go almost throw up just because I couldn't stand that kind of conflict.
How have
So
you been able to, because you've grown a global wide network, how have you been able to avoid conflict your entire life?
I married a woman who was really good at managing all that.
Oh, okay. So she's good at managing conflict for you?
Well, she manages a lot of things that would cause me discomfort if I had to get involved in it.
Gotcha.
So, you know, uh, so and also lots of years of personal growth training or whatever. I spent 30 years learning about myself, doing personal growth trainings. I was in California in Berkeley in '68, and heady times for all that. And so it took me 30 years of personal growth to realize it's okay to like approval. so, so now I'm absolutely fine with that. Like,
So
so I
your
would love
poor
you.
wife, she shoulders all the conflict for you. So does she vent to you about it or
No, no,
is it all
she's just part of my business. So she handles a lot of the back end stuff that, would be uncomfortable for me to get my hands in. And I've got, you know, three women around me and that are very strong, powerful personalities who manage a lot of my back office. And so they do that. I'm not the best player for the play. I'm not a CEO kind of person. I'm really more of an educator than anything else,
Mm,
and a researcher. But it turns out that over the years wound up developing some sort of a business so I could keep doing what turned me on and what I thought was useful stuff for people.
mhm. Okay. So you surround yourself with very strong, powerful women. I always
Yeah.
say hire your strengths, I always say hire your weaknesses, focus on your strengths. All right. So tell us a
Well,
little.
you should only do what only you can do.
I couldn't agree more. Delegate the rest. Everybody, all entrepreneurs try to have their finger in every pot because let's face it, entrepreneurs are somewhat control freaks. And they always have this, mentality that if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. And the problem is they try to dabble in legal or they try to dabble in accounting or they try to dabble in manufacturing, quality control, etc. And they're not doing any of those tasks very well. So the business starts to suffer. And so you definitely have to focus on your strengths and only do your strengths. I agree with you 1,000%. So tell us, what is the getting things done methodology?
Well, it's a set of best practices that I uncovered. I didn't make them up. I just recognized them and then objectified them. What do
Hmm.
you do to get a situation under control? What do you do to make sure that you're working on the appropriate priorities? And what do you do? How do you manage a situation appropriately? So there are three sort of models that I uncovered over all these years that I wrote about in Getting Things Done. So the five phases of how do I get things under control? I need to capture stuff that has my attention. I need to clarify exactly what needs to be done about it, if anything. Then I need to organize where the results of that thinking need to go. And then I need to reflect on the content of my agreements about all that, so that when I engage, it's a trusted engagement, not a I hope this is right. So capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage are the 5 stages.
If
And
somebody
they're
on my team can put that in a show notes, that would be very helpful for the audience. So I know my team is listening. You better be listening. So David, repeat those again real quick if you don't mind.
capture,
Capture,
clarify,
clarify,
organize,
organize,
reflect,
reflect,
engage.
engage. I think the biggest one that most of us leave out is the reflect.
People leave
Right.
out every one of those.
But I would say the most abandoned is probably reflect, huh?
Well, that's probably one of the biggest needs out there at the executive level is reflection time.
Yeah.
Step back and pull up the rear guard and see what is now my current reality, what's changed in the last 7 days, what now do I need to do, looking at what's coming toward me, et cetera. So you kind of move out of that victim mode and you move much more into the seat of the saddle.
Right. Okay. So I want to make sure somebody puts that in a note section. We have it: clarify, capture, organize, reflect, and engage. What else, David? Because you were starting to say something else.
Well, then people say, well, if I do all that, then I wind up with still 200 or 2,000 emails. I still wind up with Slack, with Teams, with all kinds of stuff that's coming at me that I may feel under control about. But which ones are the important ones? What do I need to do about importance? So how do I prioritize? And man, I struggled with that years ago, 40 years ago, when I started my consulting practice, because people are always asking, how do I prioritize? And they go, well, and I couldn't get it any simpler than 6 horizons of commitments that you or anybody has or should have anyway. The top level would be purpose.
Purpose. Let's
Michelle,
get that in the
yeah,
show notes, y'all. In the show notes. Purpose. Go ahead.
Michelle, why are you on the planet? How are you doing? That's purpose,
Yep.
right? As well as principles, like what's really, really matters to you,
Okay.
right? So in a business or a team, what's the purpose of the team? You wouldn't have a team if you didn't have some sort of a purpose. So what's the
Right.
purpose? And by the way, what are the rules of engagement about how you play together? What are the rules of engagement for your board?
Okay.
Right?
So we
So
got
there's,
purpose, principle, rules of engagement so far.
well, purpose and principles is what I call
Okay.
horizon 5,
Okay.
right?
Horizon
Uh,
5.
Can you put a pause button on this? Somebody's ringing my bell at my door. So,
I really can't.
okay, no problem.
We're
No
live.
problem. We'll let them deal. Okay.
I wish I could, but we are live.
No problem. So that's what I call level 5. Level
Okay.
4 would be, what's your vision of your purpose being fulfilled successfully? Where do you want to be career-wise, lifestyle-wise, 3 to 5 years from now? What's your vision of that? Because you could have a very similar purpose to the person sitting next to you, but a very different vision of what do you think you're going to be doing if you're doing that well. Right?
Okay, so repeat that one more time, because I want to make sure somebody on my team is getting all this into the show notes. So
So
go ahead.
level 4 is vision.
Vision.
Wild success would look, sound, or feel like what?
Okay.
Level 3 would be, okay, what do you need to do and objectives you need to accomplish over the next 12 to 24 months that would move you toward that vision? That would be goals or objectives. That's
Okay.
level 3. Right? A typical business that would have annual planning, budgeting, whatever, that would probably be at this level.
Okay.
Right.
So we got what
And
do you
then,
need to do to accomplish
right.
vision?
And
Okay.
then you have to say, what are the things you need to maintain so that all that works? And those are then the areas of focus and responsibility that you have. The org chart, for instance, for a company, finance, IT, sales, PR, operations, executive, administration, etc. Those are not things you finish. Those are things you need to just calibrate against to say, are all those okay? So this engine and this enterprise can go where it needs to go. So that's level 2
Okay.
is
We need to maintain.
things you need to maintain and at some standard. You
Okay.
know, level 1 would be, what are all the things you need to finish about any of the above? That's called projects.
Mhm.
Oh, I need to get tires on my car. Oh, we need to hire a vice president. Oh, we need to research whether we want to get a consultant to help us do this merger or acquisition. Those are projects,
Mhm.
things you've committed to finish within the next 12 months anyway, that you actually have that have an outcome that you could
Mhm.
complete.
How many projects should a company take on at one time?
It's not a company, it's the people in the company.
Okay, the people in the company, how many projects?
Most mid to senior level professionals have usually, not a matter of should, but they usually have somewhere between 30 and 100 of those.
30 to 100 projects.
Yeah, that includes personal, get tires on my car, get a
Mhm.
babysitter, as well as hire the vice president, research this new software that we're looking at, et cetera. And so that's and that would go to the team would have, or the board would have its own projects, and those are usually bigger and not nearly as many, but they would still be critical given what the board wants to do or given what the senior team wants to accomplish. So that's sort of a team inventory of projects.
So from a
And
senior level though, how does somebody manage 30 to 100 projects? I read Gary Keller's book from Keller Williams, The One Thing, to focus on that one thing that's going to catapult your business to the next level. How does your methodology differ from that? And how can somebody focus on
it
30 to
doesn't. You can only do one thing at a time.
You're right.
You just need to make sure that you have a clear focus, but you better know what you're not doing, Michelle, before you can feel comfortable about what you're not doing.
Hmm.
So if you don't have an inventory of everything you're not doing, and yet they're commitments that you've made internally or organizationally, then
Hmm.
you're not going to be fully present with whatever it is you're doing.
So that's a very good point. You got to take inventory of what you're not doing.
Correct.
Most business owners, people in general, don't do that. They don't take inventory of what they're not doing. Remember, I always talk about the ABC list. Your top priorities are those things only you can do. They're your core competencies. They're your superpowers. Nobody does them better than you. Everything in your B and C bucket, you delegate. You delegate that, and you focus on your superpowers. So you got to get crystal clear. I love this, David. You got to get crystal clear on what you're not going to do.
See, there is a list that we often, when I coach executives, they often like to create called projects delegated,
Okay.
right? Manage the staff picnic. Great. Do you care that happens? Oh, yeah, I do. Well, great. Then you better keep track of that, because you've now got a commitment with yourself that happens. You're not going to do all the activities about it, but you better have some sort of a process that lets you check in on the status of
Mm-hmm.
it. That's why a lot of your entrepreneurs don't give these things away, because they don't have a good system for checking what they've handed off.
Yeah, so if we can put in the show notes, take inventory of what you shouldn't be doing or what you're not going to do, what you don't do. Correct, David, on that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's a complex thinking process that your senior people have to go through. I think I want to do that. I'm not sure when or how, but that's something that. So we call that a someday maybe list.
A someday maybe list.
You
Okay.
could maybe call that a parking lot. Okay, let's revisit that in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years to see if I still want to do that or might want to do that. And
Well, as
so,
a CEO, though, there's things you should never do, right? Like you said before, Michelle, make sure you get crystal clear on the things you're not going to do. Then you talked about project delegation. And now you're saying delegate those projects out, but then have a parking lot for those projects that might not be as urgent, pertinent to growing your business. Is that all
well,
correct?
you're going to care about a lot of the projects you hand off to your other
Oh,
people.
1,000%. I always say inspect.
Of course. So where do you keep track of that?
Yeah, you tell me, David.
It's called projects delegated.
Projects delegate. All right, we're getting all these in the notes. Projects delegate. And you delegate senior executives to that or team members?
Whoever,
Okay.
whoever you need to give it to.
Okay. And so how else do you manage 30 to 100 projects from a senior level?
Looking at them once a week and saying, how am I doing? How is it going? What might I now need to do about any of these to either check status or kick butt or take them off everybody's list?
Okay. So to get status updates, keep them on the list, put them in the parking lot. Isn't it hard to look at 30 or difficult, time consuming to look at 30
You
to
know,
100 every week? Of 30 to 100 projects every week?
yeah, at least once a week. Now, if you're doing that weekly, you don't need to spend much time on it. You just glance through it and go, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. Ooh, God, I don't check on that.
Okay. And that's a senior management task, CEO's task. Okay.
That's a task for everybody in the organization. It's a task for their executive assistant. It's a task for every one of the directs. It's a task for every new hire.
Okay.
These are universal principles about how do I stay in control of my ecosystem.
So from the top level, CEO to senior staff, the CEO's really looking at the most important task. Projects are delegated to the senior staff. The senior staff should be really overseeing the projects that are delegated to the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it cascades all down. And if anybody's missing stuff in any of that, that's where the that's where this friction shows up in the system. So who was handling this? How come this showed up on my plate? And a
Yeah.
lot of stuff backs up to the CEO simply because there wasn't clear accountability for who was actually responsible to make sure this happened by when.
Hmm. What project management system do you use? Do you have some good tools in there that you can recommend?
Yeah, it's called the natural planning model.
A natural
Read it.
planning model. Let's put that in the show notes.
You can read in chapter 3 of my book. It's basically how you plan to get dressed, how you plan to walk into anywhere, how you plan to eat dinner. It's called, what am I trying to accomplish? Purpose. What would success look like? Vision. And then you brainstorm all the stuff that might need to be handled or dealt with in terms of dealing with that. Then you
Right.
get down to
Go ahead.
organizing. Okay, so we need to set the time for this. I need to order this thing. I need to do this, whatever. So you get some organizational structure out of that thinking, and then you have next actions on all the moving parts. So it's the 5 steps of the natural plan. And I didn't make that up. That's how you got dressed today. That's how
Mhm.
you sat down on this podcast, right? What are we trying to accomplish? What would success look like? Oh, here are all the things we need to deal with, because I heard you dealing with your staff about some of those things. How do we organize all that? Is that all in place? And next steps, all that going, great, go. That's the natural planning model, because that's how we naturally plan all the time. It's just that, unfortunately, that as soon as you get a little more complex situations, a lot of people don't do that.
Mhm.
They don't think about what's the purpose of this project. They don't think about what wild success would look like. They don't brainstorm all the potential relevant data that might need to be integrated or incorporated or considered. And then they don't have some trusted organization system out of all of that stuff. And then they don't define real specific next actions that need to happen on the moving parts.
Right.
Sorry, don't shoot the messenger. That's just the truth.
Right. So again, my head swims when I go back and think about managing 30 to 100 projects, because a lot of times it's we focus on 3 to 5 to 3 to
You
3
can't
to
you
5
can't you
right.
can't manage 30 to 100 projects. You can keep track of what they are
Right.
and then decide whether you need to do something or check something about any of them.
Okay.
But you might have handed off 45 of those projects. But if you care that they happen, that's the big issue. You don't want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh God, what's going on with X, Y, and
I
Z?
agree. I'm insomniac as it
Well,
is.
how are you going to stop that? The way you could stop that is making sure you're reviewing that consistently and doing any kind of follow-up that needs to happen.
Right. So, do you have a favorite tool or software program where all these projects go into and who they're delegated to, and an easy to review, glance at software to make sure all those
Yeah,
projects are on
yeah,
track? What software is that?
yeah. We migrated last year to Office 365, Microsoft, and
Okay.
I just use plain, you know, tasks, in there to keep track of those. I have in my task, I just have different categories of those. So I have a waiting for list. I have a list of things I need to do at my computer. I have a list of things errands I need to run. So I just have several lists that are of the different activities I need to do that are all organized in that. And we use OneNote for our basic organization data to
Okay.
just stick it in there to find out if I need to find what's my passport number. Oh yeah, that's where that is. Oh yeah.
That's what I need to start using as OneNote for that. So, there's all these different softwares like Asana and Slack and
There's
everything else,
hundreds.
Monday, but you've like
There are
Microsoft
hundreds.
best. Okay.
Yeah. You just need something simple. You just need a list manager.
Yeah.
Most of those have a lot of bells and whistles. And if you're trying to use something that's being collaborative, you're running into real issues because
Yeah.
now you have to have protocols about everybody using it and how they use it, at what level of detail they need to use it. So, I have a new book coming out in May called How Do You Apply All These Principles to a Team?
Is that the
And
title?
the title is Team, TEAM.
Okay.
Subtitle is Getting Things Done with Others.
Well, that's great. We need to make a big plug for that book.
Yay, thank you.
Team. Yeah. Well, at the end of the show, we'll talk about how everybody can obviously go out and get getting things done and then get team. Of course, I'm sure you're going for a New York Times bestseller, although you've lost count on how many you've had. All right. So, what was a pivotal moment, a challenge you had to overcome, productivity challenge maybe you had to overcome? What led you down this path of building this huge conglomerate and helping businesses worldwide?
I'm not an entrepreneur. I didn't start out trying to say, how much money can I make? Basically, I was an American intellectual history major in graduate school in Berkeley in 1968.
Oh, wow.
So if you so
None of
then
that
at
was in
some
the bio. I think the bio didn't probably capture most of the things you've accomplished in your life.
so at some point I said, instead of studying people who are enlightened, let me go find my own. And
Yeah.
that was a heady time to do that. So I dropped out of graduate school and did all the personal growth stuff. I did, met all kinds of gurus, got a black belt in the martial arts, did all kinds of things to sort of figure out who I was.
Wow.
And of course, they weren't paying people to do that. So I had to pay the rent. So I wound up being a good number two guy. I had friends in my network who were starting their own businesses or had their own small businesses. And I became a really good number two guy. I would just walk in and say, okay, what help do you need? Usually their systems needed a lot of improvement about how they were doing what they were doing. And I'm Mr. Lazy. I'm the laziest guy you ever met. With how little effort can we make this happen? And how earlier can we leave today? So I would walk in and look at what their system was. Now they call that process improvement.
Yeah. It's
I
one of
just
my
called it.
P's and my 6 P's. I have the 6 P's. You have the five.
And I just said, how earlier can we leave?
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at what they were doing and then help them figure out better ways to do all of that, because I'm kind of a systems thinker in that way. And then we'd fix it, and then I get bored. So I go leave and work with another friend. Then at one point I realized they'd actually call that something and they paid him. It's called consultant. Oh my God. Oh my God. Consultant. Wow. What a thought. And so I said, I wonder if I could just, create my life by doing project by project, and not have to commit to necessarily, joining a company. And
Mhm.
so I hung out my shingle, Allen Associates, 1982, probably before you were born, Uh, and then,
Thank
but
you for
because
that compliment.
but because I'd been so attracted to both my meditation practice, spiritual practices, spiritual explorations, and the martial arts, the clarity of clear space was a cool thing. How do I stay clear so I can stay focused on what I'm doing? And boy, the martial arts, that's a key element. But as my consulting little practice started to get more successful, my life got busier, and it started to sort of screw up the clear space. I said, wait a minute, how do I maintain my own clear space? And I began to then explore various techniques that allowed me to stay focused on what I was doing, not forget anything or whatever. Had a couple of mentors that helped me with all that. And it turned out that what I uncovered for myself, I turned around and started to use it with my consulting clients, and it produced the same results for them: more clarity, more focus, more control, more space to focus on the cool stuff. So that became a lot of the core of what we didn't call it coaching back then, but that's kind of what it was. It was coaching these entrepreneurs and CEOs. And then somebody in the big corporate training world saw what I was doing and said, David, we need that result in our whole culture. Can you design some sort of a training around all of this? I said, I don't know. I'll see. So I wound up creating a pilot program and a 2.5-day personal productivity seminar for Lockheed. 1983-84, we did a pilot program for 1,000 executives and managers, and it hit a nerve. It's like, wow, got totally successful. I went, could have fooled me. Suddenly I was thrust into the corporate training world. If you told me as an American intellectual history major in Berkeley in '68, I said, come on, what are you smoking? Are you kidding? But it turned out that was the ripest audience for what I had uncovered, and they were willing to pay me to do something about it. So that became the start in 83-84.
So what you uncovered, what was that secret sauce that you uncovered?
Capture, clarify, organize, reflect.
Yeah, I just wanted you to repeat it one more time. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was it. I didn't have all exactly those words for it, but it was that process. And and again, training something, how can I objectify what I've come up with and put it in some sort of a training program so that a lot of people could at least see the map of what this game was. Whether they played it or not was up to them. But that was, and then fast forward from then to, hundreds of thousands of people I trained, mostly in American and U.S. corporations in their training world. And a lot of my consulting turned into coaching for one-on-one for mid to senior level folks that went through my seminar or heard about my stuff and said, hey, David, can you sit next to me desk side and help me implement what you've come up with? So I spent literally thousands of hours, literally one-on-one with some of the busiest and brightest and best people you'd ever meet in your life, helping them implement these few, what sounds like a simple thing. But they're simple things that most people don't have a habit to do. So that's, and then at some point, somebody said, David, you ought to write the book. I said, wow. Because after, it took me, Michelle, it took me 20 years to figure out what I'd figured out, and that it was unique. And nobody else had done it. And that it was bulletproof. Anybody implemented any of these things, it improved their conditions.
How hard is it? How hard is it today? Just popped into my brain. How hard is it today? Because, everybody says everything's already been done. Like getting things done, the one thing, the E-Myth, etc. How hard is it today to come up with revolutionary ideas like you did back in the 80s? Like you said, it took you 20 years to realize it was so unique.
Beats me. I have no idea. I had no plan about that. I had no plan about doing that. Again, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a.
Well, I would beg to differ, sir. I think you are quite the entrepreneur.
Well, what I did was try to figure out and work through what's a business model that I can do so I can keep doing this work, So once I wrote the book, I thought, okay, I'm done. I wrote the manual. I had no idea how successful it was going to be, how much uptake there would be. I just said, I got to get it out of my head, write the manual in case I get run over by a bus. Somebody could at least pick it up and maybe even make use out of it. And once
Mm.
the first edition was published in 2001, I had a woman that emailed me. I think she was in Philadelphia. She just picked up my book at Barnes and Nobles. She read it and implemented it. And she went, "David, this changed my life." I went, "Oh, wow. I guess this could be scaled," meaning I don't have to personally show up, meaning somehow I was able to put this into some sort of form that people could get value out of the form, not just me. So that
Yeah.
was a big game changer to realize this was potentially scalable. But that then took a lot of time. You know, by that time I had hired several other trainers and some people doing the coaching. So we had a small company then. And this was back in Ojai in California, and I said, "Okay, guys." And then the world started knocking on our door because this thing got translated into many languages and started to spread around the world, the book. And so I said, because they were knocking on our door, "David, how can we do this in the UK, in Brazil, in South Africa, and whatever?" And I had no idea how to build a global network. None. Never done that before. Got advice. This was tough to do. And so, but we kept moving forward on it. And then people kept coming to us who seemed to have resources that they could use to help us scale this. So learning to scale it was like the next, golly, 20 years, I guess now, is how to do that. So it was not a simple formula or process to get there. It was just following our nose. What's the next thing that seems to have our attention that may help us do this?
Yeah.
Our mission was basically to get this methodology out to as many people in the world that might want it. So had no idea quite how to do that, but we wound up having resources come to us, and we recognized them to help us sort of scale a global network of certified trainers for this methodology and build a business model around that.
How many trainers do you have today?
I don't know how many certified trainers we've trained. Probably, 35, 40, 50. But what we did was we took the responsibility to train master trainers. So once we
Okay.
certified a master trainer in Norway, for instance, or in Germany or in South Africa, then they had the capability to then train their own trainers within their own region, because these folks had their own businesses. So it was up to them really to build their own network of how they did that.
So GTD, Getting Things Done, has spread to over 90 countries, each with its own culture and approach to work. I mean, I know that very well because Solid Tucker, I mean, we do acquisitions in other countries as well. And but have you noticed any interesting adaptations of your methodologies in different cultures? Because there's different cultures all around the world. What change? What differences have you noticed in adaptation of your
None.
methodology? Really?
No, the methodology is universal. Anybody who's busy that wants to get things done with less effort is a universal quest, issue, whatever. And how you get there, I just uncovered or reduced it down to the basics of how you get there, how you make that happen. So we do this is being done in South Africa, it's being done in Japan, it's being done in Brazil, it's being done in Norway, it's being done all over the place. And we have now some very brilliant folks that have been attracted to do this work. So they're pretty much the spokespeople now in their own countries.
Sorry, I think the cough is contagious. I started and you now have it.
I just found the mute button. So, okay.
All right. So, well, let me ask you this. In a rapid pace of technology advancement, and the ever-changing landscape of work, how does the GT methodologies evolved since its inception? Are there any new principles of practice you've incorporated or plan to include going
No.
forward?
What's different is the audience. When I wrote the
Okay.
first edition of the book, Getting Things Done, we knew the targeted audience was the fast track professionals. So you'll see me on the cover with a suit and tie, and so it was sort of designed for that audience because they were the folks ripest. They were the ones being hit with the tsunami of email and corporate change and flattened organizations, et cetera. And so they were the hungriest, essentially, for how do I stay in control and on top of this game that is increasing like crazy. So the second edition of the book didn't change the basic principles that I talked about. I changed a little bit of the vocabulary as I discovered a little more subtlety to some of the words that I was using. But the big change was the audience. So instead of fast track professionals, I knew this from the beginning. This worked for students, it worked for clergy, it worked for stay-at-home dads, it worked for anybody who had a busy life that wanted to stay more in control of it. So the second edition was really more universally, I used a more universal vocabulary and focus on the application of this. But the principles are universal. You're still going to use this when you fly to Jupiter in 2090. You still need to capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. So these are universal principles. They don't change. What changed also with the technology is speed and volume of what you have to manage. I mean, now how many in-basket channels do you have, Michelle? There's Team, there's Slack, there's Evernote, there's email, there's SMS, there's WhatsApp, there's all these channels that have been added that everybody thought that would then make it simpler. No, it didn't. All it did was add more input, and the technology allowed a lot larger volume, a lot faster to come at you. But everybody buys software, they think that's going to handle stuff. No, it doesn't. For many people, the add-on software in their teams or their organizations did nothing but complicate things even more, because nobody built in protocols or principles about how do I personally manage all the stuff that's coming across as fast as it's coming across with the volume that's coming across. Make sense?
That's a very good point. Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, we are currently developing our own proprietary software AI model, and to improve efficiencies, productivity. We'll have a SaaS model as well.
But see, all that still has to, I don't care how good AI gets, you still have to curate it. You're still going to have to make decisions about what it came up with and whether that's right or not.
Right. Like you said, you have to have those policies, procedures.
You have to personally know what you need to do to get this stuff under control that you have now let into your personal ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely doing it because I know it will help improve efficiencies and aid us, assist us in helping a lot more clients. But you're right. You have to go back to that.
Well, a good AI we've already seen is like a good EA. What they're going to do is help you make decisions, right? They're not going to make the decision for you.
Correct. Yeah, we're still going to be making all the decisions. It's just going to
decision support.
Yeah, and it's going to streamline.
Yeah,
1,000%. Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few questions that came in. Let's see if we can get to a couple of these. Niall says, from the early days of developing GTD, getting things done, to seeing its current global impact, what has been the most rewarding aspect of this journey? And would you do anything differently in hindsight?
Well, the most rewarding aspect is almost daily we get feedback from people. This changed my life. This allowed me to do what I really wanted to do. Give me time to do it. And create that. And of course, a lot of these people in healthcare and other places that are helping a lot of people, a lot of my focus and mission is to help people who are helping people. If I can help people who have got a great mission out there themselves to assist other people, if I can help them do what they're doing better so they feel better about their work, that's extremely valuable stuff. I have one of my great friends and now a huge supporter and a client has been the head of OBGYN in a Connecticut clinic. And she said, this saves lives. It allows us to make sure that the things are happening that need to happen, and that I'm in control and have conscious ability to be able to manage the stuff that shows up when there's a problem, when there's a crisis, whatever. So, all right, you
So it's very effective in a personal life and business teams. It's universal. So it's very
yeah, I don't make any distinction like that.
im-
For the last 40
okay.
years, it's just what's next.
Right,
What's up,
right.
and that you can call it personal, professional if you want, but I don't make that distinction.
Well, I will tell you 30 to 50 to 30 to 100 projects at one time scares me. And I know my clients and I know my listeners, and I'm sure it scares them too. It scares the bejesus out of them. So a couple more questions I have on that. And I keep going back to that because it can be overwhelming, right?
Well,
When you hear 30 to
what's
100 projects.
overwhelming is when you don't capture it and clarify it and stick it out in front of your face. It's then going to keep bothering you internally and subliminally. So,
And these projects are not just senior level projects where we're like, okay, we want to implement software, AI, we want to open up 20 locations. It's also from the inner teams work. Hey, we need to produce this many evaluations a month. We need to sell this many businesses,
yeah,
right? That those projects are going down into
yeah,
that team level,
right.
correct?
So don't blame me
Okay.
for your list.
So don't blame me for your
Yeah,
list.
that's not my list. I got my own, right? So you need to
Yeah.
decide where you want to track your projects, whether that's 30, 35, 92, 63, who cares? You better define what they are, stick those out in front of you. I
Yeah.
never coach an executive that they wound up getting a complete project list that didn't go, God, that really changes all my priorities for the next 2 weeks. Never had an exception.
Right. I agree, 1,000%. So Hayden asked, could you share a story or an example that stands out to you where GTD, getting things done, I keep repeating that in case somebody just joined, dramatically changed someone's life or career? I think you gave one story about the lady. Do you have any entrepreneurial stories on here?
Hundreds. I couldn't bring one to
One you like
I
to share?
couldn't bring one to mind right now. All kinds of people. Well, many people listening to this might know who Howard Stern is.
Of course. I was actually on the Howard Stern show
Well, Howard's a huge
way back
Howard's a
when.
huge champion of my stuff. As a matter of fact, we coached him, and he hired my coach as his COO. So Marcy Turk is Howard's COO, and they basically changed the organization, and it allowed Howard to then actually keep doing all the stuff he was doing instead of just folding tent because he was getting overwhelmed with stuff. So, and he was I
Wow.
can share that because he was quite public for the last 6 months after he ran across this stuff. So, you know,
I met Marcy too. So yeah, I was on their show. Did you ever connect with Dr. Meisner, who founder of
no,
BNI? No. All right, because he grew kind of the same way you did. Different, but kind of. Anyway, he's in a bunch of different countries too, all over the world. So let's talk about your up. I don't see any more questions coming in. Keep your questions coming. Keep your questions coming. All right, so let's kind of talk about teams. But okay, so what's getting in the way of our personal productivity? What do you think that biggest bottleneck is? What's getting in our way?
people don't capture, they don't clarify, they don't organize,
Goes
they
back
don't
to the
reflect. It's the
basics.
basics. And any one of those, if it's a weak suit, you could capture all kinds of stuff. A lot of people just are list crazy. They got lists all over the place, but they don't decide what to do about what's on those lists. So they capture, but they don't clarify. Or even if they
Right.
clarified, okay, here's what I need to do about that, they don't have some trusted external brain to organize the results of that, to be reminded of all the errands they need to run when they go out for errands, or that the stuff they need to talk to their boss about or their assistant about next time they meet with him or her. So so people could, even if they captured and clarified, then a lot of people don't have a good trusted organization system that they trust will remind them of the right stuff at the right time. And then even if they did all that, if they don't look at this stuff regularly, keep it current, they don't reflect, they don't build the reflection process, the stuff, they'll fall off the wagon, and they won't trust it. They won't trust their brain. They won't trust their system. So it then goes back to the latest and loudest in terms of how they're driven.
How long does it really take to master GTD?
You know, people have often asked that. It depends on how much of this you actually want to implement. If you really wanted to get this to the point where there's nothing on your mind except whatever you're doing, 2 years if you're really good.
2 years to master.
If you're really good. A lot of people haven't mastered it after 10 years. Okay? Because these are huge habits to change, as simple as this all sounds.
Yeah.
You know,
how long does it typically take to break an old habit, make a new habit?
I don't know. Depends on how different the habit is that you're trying to change.
Yeah, and how disciplined, how motivated you
Yeah, well,
are.
you know, a good friend of mine and a huge champion of my stuff, Charles Duhigg, who wrote, you know, The Power of Habit. You know, you can read that book. That'll help.
The Power of Habit. Yeah, that's a good book. Let's put that in the show notes, The Power of Habit. Who's the author on that
Charles
again?
Duhigg, Duhigg.
Let's see if we can get him on in the show notes. Okay, so Reese asks, based upon your extensive experience and insight into productivity trends, what do you project for the future of work? How should individuals and organizations prepare to stay focused despite future changes? There's so much going around in the world. So what's your response to this question?
Well,
there's a couple questions.
They just need to implement these best practice behaviors for both the individuals and the teams involved, so that they're ready to deal with change, they're ready to deal with volume, they're ready to deal with surprise, they're ready to deal with that, you know, with all those things. But you need both individual capability to be able to handle that, as well as, you know, good organizational principles and standards and structures that allow you to deal with whatever all those changes are. So, you know, I have a chapter in our new book called The New Work, where we talk about everything from Deming all the way to Agile and Scrum and Kanban and Six Sigma and all that stuff, which basically helps to manage the efficiency of external workflow. But as a good friend of mine said, David, GTD is lean for the brain. How do you make sure that you stay clear inside your head based upon all the inputs that you're getting or allowing yourself to have? There's also another chapter on no. How do you say no? I'm sure, Michelle, you have that as part of your coaching. Is like, how many things can you not do right now, or should you even not do?
I think I'm pretty good at the art of no. Well, sounds like you are too.
Not if you're not willing to keep track of all the projects that you've committed to.
Well, yeah, I mean, we typically, you know, but I think we're looking at the projects a little bit differently. So it's good to get clarity. Like when I think about the projects, I'm thinking as a CEO and I own multiple different companies, you know, what are my 3 to 5 to thrive? And of course, I have projects within the teams and the senior teams and the analyst teams, marketing teams, etc. So I do have all those projects. I just think of it a little bit differently. But now I think I have a little bit more clarity as that goes.
Well, you're certainly going to have strategic projects, the ones that, if they're completed, are going to move you or the company, you know, further or faster. Or
That's
better.
what I focus on, are those
fine.
strategic products. So I focus on the 3 to 5. My senior team focuses on the 3 to 5, and of course, we have our other
it's all the other stuff that falls through the cracks that then prevents them from being able to be really clear about what those strategic projects are and the status of all of that stuff, and also their personal life.
That's right, because their personal life comes into it. And that's the biggest thing, is how to prevent things from falling through the cracks, because it happens to all of us. It happens to the best of us. It might not happen to you, You got powerful women supporting you too. But it does happen in every business. The number one prevention for that, I guess, is the 5 levels you've been discussing.
Correct.
Okay. So teams, let's get into teams while we have a little bit of time here. So tell us a little about teams and how's that going to be different than getting things
Well,
done.
for 40 years, I've worked on the getting things done methodology, which primarily has been implemented by individuals to help them stay productive and on top of their world. And then once people get this, they go, God, how can I get everybody around me to get this? It would make life and work so much easier. And I never had a good model or a good template to be able to do that. I was too busy just going to the next people that wanted to know personally, how do I do this better and better. So my co-author and I had lunch in Amsterdam, 2 or 3 years ago, and Ed has been doing a lot of uh, getting things done, training and coaching at senior team levels, more than I have in the last 10 or 15 years. So he said, well, let's write the book. So, we spent the last 2 years formulating how do we define these best practices for teams, for people when you're trying to get things done with other people. What are the best things that you need to do, or what are the best practices essentially that make those things work? And he's got a lot of good examples we put in the book about senior teams that sort of got this and then saw how that affected their whole culture when people in their whole culture started to get these methodologies. So both by osmosis, by mentoring, by modeling what these best practices are, and how much difference that made in terms of morale, in terms of energy, in terms of just effectiveness. So that's why the book. It filled in a gap. The gap was how do I share this and get other people around me to engage in these best practices.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So we can't wait to read Teams. And that comes out when?
In May 21
In May.
is, I think, Penguin's targeted date for publish.
Let's put that in the show notes. The Teams comes out,
It's called
launches in May.
Team, no S.
Team
Just
what?
Team, no S.
Oh,
Yep.
team. So let's write that team in the show notes that it comes out in May. So people can't buy it till May,
They
correct?
can pre-order. I think it's already on Amazon and some other places. So if they wanted it,
So let's go pre-order. I'm gonna have my company pre-order some copies as well.
yay.
Always look for support when I come out with my books. When I came out with Exit Rich, we did a huge pre-order launch. Of course, that came out at the beginning of COVID. Best timing ever. But we still made the list. And so, how can people contact you? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, there's gettingthingsdone.com, which is,
Okay, gettingthingsdone.com.
and,
Put that in the show notes
and then
too.
if gettingthingsdone.com/YouTube, you'll see a whole lot of short little videos that I've done and 3 TEDx's that I've done and or whatever. So if people like to see YouTube stuff, there's a good bit of our stuff there. So that's how they could do it.
Wonderful. Okay. Any last and everybody go out and buy the book Team. Buy the book Team. If you haven't bought Getting Things Done, go do that now. I know I have one in my library, but I'm going to go buy both of your books. You'll see. I believe in supporting other authors. So I always encourage people to go get Exit Rich too. Any last minutes, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience?
Your head's for having ideas, not for holding them.
Your head's for having ideas, not for holding them. Let's put that in the show notes. Your head is for having ideas, not for holding them. I love that. That's brilliant because so many people are like, I have this idea, I have this brilliant idea, I have this,
Well,
I have that.
your
Well,
brain
you're right.
your brain is a
Share it.
crappy office.
That's another good one-liner. Your brain is a crappy office. I love it. Keep them coming. You got a minute left. Give me all your one-liners.
Those are my best.
All right, everybody go check out gettingthingsdone.com. Make sure you go check out his YouTube channel. Make sure you go purchase Team which comes out in May. You've been a wonderful guest, David. You shared so many golden nuggets with us, words of wisdom, and hopefully everybody, you're going to have to look, let me just warn y'all, you're going to have to go back and listen to this again and again and again, because it's like drinking through a fire hose. There was a lot of content, a lot of information shared. So go back, listen to this, take your notes, and implement is key. I always say knowledge is power, but implementation is key to success. So make sure you implement everything, the 5 levels that David said. Like he said, it could take 2 years to master it, but many people have taken longer. What is the secret to success to master this, 2 years or shorter, David?
Just start.
Just start, that's the biggest thing, right? Like Nike says, just do it. That's sometimes where people get paralyzed as they think about, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then they never get started. So just start. So thank you so much, David. You are a wonderful guest. Thank you to our audience for tuning in to another episode of Exit Rich. I know you found so much great content here, so many golden nuggets. Go share this with your friends. Go share. This is for everybody. This is for personal development. This is for entrepreneurs. This is for everybody. Like David said, it's global. He doesn't really decipher. So go share this with your network. Make sure you get this out to the audience of everyone. Share it in your news feeds. Get the message out. Go get David's book. Till I see you next Wednesday on another episode of Exit Rich. Make sure you subscribe to Exit Rich. I'll see you next Wednesday.